Okay, Phanatik, I'm very sorry. We're 15 minutes over, as is typical for me. I'm gonna drag you in. Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself? You can go by your handle, or you can say your name. Whatever's comfortable with you. I'm gonna just call you Phanatik.
Cool. I'll just use my handle. Hi, I'm Phanatic. I do some video editing for Tyler. As you can tell, probably by my accent, I live in the UK, and I'm also I was ill today, so I might sound a bit weird. Um, and yeah, I just wanted to come in today to talk about the riots that have been happening. As I saw you discussing them yesterday, and
Yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna I was gonna try to look some stuff up about it, but I kind of loved it. To jump into it, can you tell me what kind of in a general sense where you live, relative to what's going on, and sort of what your personal connection to these issues would be? Sorry, I'm gonna hit you with an interview if you don't mind. And anything you
it's
don't want
no
to
worries.
answer, just say I'm gonna be cagey about it.
So, so I don't live near Southport at all. I very much I'm quite the distance from it. I've got a bit of notes. Is it okay if I just read off?
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
no worries. This is primarily why I wanted to talk about it because this I feel quite strongly about. This is why I wanted because when you were talking about it, it was the riots and stuff, and I felt like a piece was missing, and I need to. So this is kind of the inciting incident for the whole thing. Content warning for like the next 30 seconds. It can be quite distressing. Um, on 29th July 2024, a man entered a Taylor Swift themed dance class at Heartspace in Southport and began a stabbing spree. There were three fatalities: Baby King, 6, Elsie Stancombe, 7, Alice De Silva Aguilar, 9. Leanne Lucas, 35, is in critical condition while she was shielding the children at the class. So that's the content warning over.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the inciting incident. And shortly after that, later that day, there were reports, and this comes from Channel 3 now, that the perpetrator was a 17-year-old by the name of Ali Al Shakati. This was parroted by Russia Times, RT, who
Yeah.
then later retracted it. And Channel 3 now deleted their tweet. I think they initially made a tweet and then they had a post as well. And Channel 3 now isn't a news source, they're an aggregator. They pulled from X or Twitter. They pull whatever they pulled, they got from Twitter. So they basically uh, parroted a conspiracy theory.
Their journalism consisted of a retweet.
Exactly. Um, so this is what happened, and immediately you had a far right agitator by the name of Tommy Robinson. In the UK riots thread in the news forum, I called him a fascist pig,
Yeah.
just for complete transparency.
For talking about Tim Pool, Tommy Robinson is a kind of old YouTube notable Sargon of Akkad back in the day was the Free Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson's a very
Mm,
outspoken Islamophobe, and a Britain first white supremacist nationalist. I believe that's not an unfair characterization of the points he literally espouses. And he's been repeatedly censored. I don't know how to say it specifically in Britain, and told not to talk about stuff basically.
oh yeah.
So, but anytime you hear his name, it's basically like finding out, like, hearing Richard Spencer anywhere in the proximity of a black issue is roughly the same thing as hearing Tommy Robinson relative to anything to do with Islamophobia, or really just kind of anybody in the Arab Crescent, or just brown people in general. I don't think he makes a distinction
Mm.
in his
No,
own way.
he founded the English Defense League. Uh, and those are the people that if you look up the Southport riots, those are supporters of the English Defense League. So we kind of have a direct connection between the people that turned up in Southport, and Tommy Robinson, who was tweeting, he shared an audio recording of a woman that was in Southport who was talking about like the kind of immediate reaction to the stabbing. And here, Tommy Robinson's post specifically focused on like he got a picture of people in a boat, basically of a specific ethnicity on a boat in presumably the Channel, and this is what he's directly referencing is the small boats, quote unquote, crisis that the media has been harping on about. So he's directly kind of dog whistling here with this picture and kind of targeting migrants uh, in regards to this to the situation in Southport. It was later discredited. It wasn't a migrant at all. The person was born in Cardiff. He was Welsh. His parents were Rwandan, but he was English. He didn't come over as a migrant.
Is this people are sharing this name Stephen Yaxley Lennon? Is that the name of the
That's Tommy Robinson's real name.
Really?
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is a very serious
name.
I would change it too. So Tommy Robinson, really Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, but he uses other names because he has several criminal convictions. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Sorry, but please continue.
No worries. So the EDL or supporters of the EDL, because the EDL, there's reports that it's not a singular organization anymore. It's completely, it's decentralized basically into various splinter groups.
As terrorist cells do.
Interesting that. So they showed up outside Southport Mosque. They call this a protest. I don't know about you. I don't normally bring crates of cider to a protest.
Mm-hmm. Cider?
Alcohol. It's a very juicy kind of alcohol.
Okay, like literally alcoholic apple cider type.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apple cider, pear cider. Gotcha.
Cider in America is often non-alcoholic.
Really?
Yeah,
it may as well not be here.
Yeah. It's usually made in the fall, and we have. I think there's alcoholic ciders, but you can get cider as a little kid that doesn't have alcohol in it. So I have to make that connection for my American audience. Some other people might be like, "No, it's always alcoholic, just a Midwest thing." Please continue.
Sorry, I kind of said that with the I assumed that everyone knew what cider was.
No, it's completely fine.
So these EDL guys very quickly started throwing missiles at both the mosque and police officers who were armed in riot gear once they realized what was happening. And then from then on, it was the conversation kind of shifted away from the stabbing to these riots. That started happening, and they started showing up all over the place. There's some in Hartlepool, London, Sunderland, and over that weekend there was several others. The situation is still ongoing, but that's kind of where we are. We're in the midst of the riots at the moment.
And are they still pretty much like localized to the Southport region? Where is Southport? If I'm looking at
Southport is a tiny town just north of Liverpool.
Okay, so that's like on the coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a place called Merseyside.
Gotcha. See, I don't know.
So
I thought the way that Southport sounds, it sounds like a subsection of a city. So in my mind, I haven't double checked yet. In my mind, it sounds like it's like a chunk of London or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very much like it's next to Liverpool, but it's not part of the main city center. It's like it's north, way out. Yeah, it's definitely like if I had to, yeah, it's probably like an hour, half an hour to 45-minute drive on the motorway.
Mm-hmm.
UK is very small.
Yeah. Oh, please go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna shift gears because so that was kind of the situation that we have now, and the way my notes go is that I want to build the context for how this sort of happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you know who Nigel Farage is?
Yeah, yeah. We're talking about Sargon. We got the whole crew back together here. Yeah,
Mhm.
Nigel Farage was the, correct me if I'm wrong, leader of the Brexit movement, or one of the most notable voices for Brexit, and a very fairly, even for Britain, far right politician. Correct?
Yes. He's had an interesting career.
You're breaking up right now, Phanatik. You might have to rewind about 10 seconds.
Oh, is it better? Is it better now? Okay, sorry. There,
Yeah,
I was talking and then like the Discord wasn't reacting, but now.
no problem. Just restart directly after I stop talking. That's right around when you cut off, so it's a perfect point.
Yeah. Okay, so Nigel Farage started off this. Well, I wouldn't say started off his career, but he became notable when he became the leader of the UKIP party, that famous UKIP party,
Mm-hmm.
um, famous for losing.
Yes. You're still a little staticky. If you want to mess with that, I'll just explain this to you. I'll explain UKIP for a second and give you like a bit of a gap second. The United Kingdom Independent Party was a political party in Britain that was like nominally like kind of close to the American Libertarian Party in terms of influence and composition, but had become, I think, more increasingly righty. And then as the Count Dankula and free speech absolutist movement, which was in UK, sort of got hijacked by the anti-Islam or the Islamophobia and pro England first movements, Britain first movements. The UK incorporated some online actors to try to boost their notoriety. This led ultimately to the very famous Sargon of Akkad quadrupling down on the phrase, "I wouldn't even rape you," to, I believe, a female MP, which is a member of parliament, if I believe correctly. He said this a number of times, "I wouldn't even rape you," and tried to kind of get away with saying that was not a bad thing, because I don't know really what he would have accomplished by going down on it over and over again. But this eventually led to essentially the end of the UKIP party in any valuable sense in UK politics. They may have had a resurgence since then, but I do remember hearing basically they all got in there. Count Dankula left, Count Dankula left right around the time Sargon said that thing, and then the entire UKIP party membership essentially left and joined other parties in protest of his existence on the ticket, and then they became politically inefficacious. I think I've completely lost Phanatik. If you want to rejoin, yeah, okay. Bring you back in. Hopefully.
How's it now?
That is great. I don't know if you heard my UKIP explanation. I think I did a good job of bridging that gap. If you want to add anything and make any corrections, I'm free for it.
No, sounded pretty comprehensive. I just wanted to say UKIP haven't been successful in the House of Commons, so they haven't won any of their seats in constituencies, but they've Nigel Farage has joined the European Parliament, so he's been able to campaign directly with you in Europe, but not exactly within UK politics itself.
Okay, so he's moved on to basically like the international stage at this point. He's a representative of England, or is he appointed, or how does that work?
Not at the moment. This was a while ago. So when he was in UK, this is before Brexit. So before Brexit, he was in UKIP, and UKIP was winning the MEP elections, and this. So what he wanted to do was basically get a handle on the relationship between the EU and UK. He was he constantly campaigning against the EU's membership, or the UK's membership to the EU.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what his position was. And because they kept losing elections within the UK, he couldn't affect the membership directly. So he was always going through the European Parliament and then and doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the 2015 election where he actually got a foothold, because this was when David Cameron made a significant. David Cameron was the prime minister at the time, so he was the leader of the Conservative Party. So he was prime minister, and he made a bet.
Mm-hmm.
And the bet was, if the Conservative Party win the next election, he would hold an EU referendum.
And this became Brexit.
And this was Brexit. So the 2016 EU referendum. I'll post these notes in stream chat and the thread that I put. I think I put it in the thread, but anyway.
No, please do.
You can see the Ipsos.
I said, please do. Post your notes. Thank you for posting your notes. There we go.
But so in 2016 they had the EU referendum that went through. 51.9% of the votes was to leave the UK. And this kind of exposed kind of something about UK, kind of how people thought within the UK, and mainly this is kind of the picture I want to paint everyone regarding the UK, is that it's an old country. It's if you recall, in 2020 there were during COVID, Italy had a high casualty rate because they have a high percentage of retirees within their population, which is why they've had such a high casualty rate. It's similar in the UK. There's the population skews older, and the Ipsos Mori report on how the UK voted in the referendum showed that most of the people that voted leave, they were generally older. They were generally in these more remote areas or in the countryside. The people who voted to remain were mainly in metropolitan areas, were younger university students who largely benefited from, because universities benefited from membership with the EU.
Mm-hmm.
The Brexit or the Leave campaign was largely built around kind of targeting the EU or like it was the £350 million figure that which they argued could go to the NHS. It didn't. Spoiler: it didn't go to the NHS in the end. But the Nigel Farage's tactic was targeting the migration issue. His tactic was, if the UK remains in the EU, then the UK will be forced to basically take in migrants, just how other countries in Germany, France, Netherlands, Switzerland, they'd all, Sweden as well, they'd all been taking in refugees. I think this was around the time of Syria, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was Nigel Farage, and Nigel Farage has been. Oh, I didn't actually chart this properly. Sorry, he started in UKIP. Once the Leave won the EU referendum, he kind of fucked off for a bit.
Yeah, because you guys had Boris Johnson was kind of the most notable person in British politics, and then he, I don't know, touched somebody's butt or something, and now he's fucking gone. Well, for a second,
yeah,
we were united across the pond and both having presidents or national leaders with dog shit haircuts.
Oh yeah. Partygate was what eventually brought Boris Johnson down, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to host parties in 10 Downing Street during a COVID lockdown. So Nigel Farage kind of fucked off for a bit from UK politics. During this time, he was actually cozying up with Donald Trump. So he was away in the US, And for a while, that's where he was. But around in the 2020s, he started to come back to the UK and reformed not reformed UK, but he formed Brexit Party to try and push the Conservative Party government to get Brexit over the line. What that means is, at this point, the relationship with the EU, which Nigel Farage wanted to basically sever. It eventually happened in 2020. They eventually they did sever ties with the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Nigel Farage's Brexit Party then was remade into Reform UK. This is kind of where we're getting into more recent times. Reform UK ran in the most recent 2024 general election. They won 4 seats. That the 4 seats thing isn't that notable. What's more notable about them is they had 4 million votes, which means that there was a big resurgence. Or I say resurgence. There was a big. They were very popular across the country, but they weren't popular enough to win seats, except in one of the. So Nigel Farage won the seat for his constituency, which is Clacton. I want to call it Clacton specifically because there's a YouTube channel that I follow called Politics Joe. They do on the ground interviews. So they went to Clacton and they interviewed the people there. And what I found interesting about these people is that they don't talk like English. A lot of when you hear them talk, a lot of what they say doesn't sound like what an English person really says in regards to the issues. A lot of it is kind of.
They sound like us, don't they?
Yes, it was very much American rhetoric. They brought up litter boxes in schools.
Oh hell yeah! I gotta know what they took our jobs sounds like in British English. Don't humiliate yourself for me.
Oh no, I couldn't possibly imitate this accent. I'll put it in the chat for the open mic.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, but it's these guys here. You don't have to play it now.
No, I'll hit it right after we're done here.
So these guys. So this is Clacton, and they're very indicative of the kind of people that Nigel Farage and his party are targeting with their.
Yeah, you're pretty obliterated. You know what? Actually, I will just play the Politics Joe thing for a second, and then if you want to try to establish it.
Called a racist now.
This guy sounds like he's an American trying to do it. I'll play this for a second, and then if you manage to wiggle it out, just go ahead and talk again, and then we'll try to resume conversation. And I'll give everybody a second to check this individual out. This motherfucker right here, I'll tell you him right now. If you ever want to come pop on right over across the pond, we got a spot for you in Central Tennessee. We got a house for you. It's made out of tin. It's all up on the side of a hill, and you can just shoot shotguns out the back of that motherfucker at the other hills all goddamn day. This is a person that's robbed by being born in fucking Britain, I'll tell you that.
It's so boring. I'll tell you that much. It's boring. So you call me what you like, throw what you like at me, but that being labelled a racist is actually boring now. I feel like a foreigner in my own country. That's what.
It's boring. He said it's boring. That's awesome. I like it when you get called fucking racist so much that you're like, I need a new one.
I feel like. And do you think that's fair?
But as you can see, there's a lot of support for him.
Hell yeah.
His views and his opinions.
You guys ever seen the movie Sin City? This is the yellow guy. My man had to he thinks about racist shit so much it gave him a little bit of extra headspace there.
And I share them because after Brexit, we were told that immigration would be curtailed and it would be controlled, and the absolute opposite's happened. We've just been lied to. There's no other way of putting it. if the Conservative Party and the Labour Party had said we believe in open borders, vote for us, then people would have voted for that. But the Tories have just completely lied in everything they've said. So
Can you hear me?
yeah, so
Yes,
I think I share the views of
Would you
most people.
mind changing the survey region to USE?
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing? Okay, that actually does sound
Good.
immediately better.
I think it's at US Central right now, which is fine.
Okay. If you think that'll work, then it'll work. You sound better overall, so whatever. What the fuck, Rotterdam? I don't know why it would be there.
Goddamn. The Dutch.
The Dutch. Okay. Please continue. If you can remember where you were. I got this gammon on the page.
Oh yeah, so these are what you would call the gammons here in Clacton, and who I would say have largely become the face of the UK, which I find very unfortunate because in the UK we don't really loudly talk politics. Like it's not something that you see very often. That the bumper stickers on people's cars displaying their like political affiliation, that doesn't generally happen in the UK. It's not something you see. People tend to keep their politics to themselves. So when you see these guys, like in Clacton, and they're very loud about it, they tend to take over. They tend to take the voice away from, they take the attention away from like ordinary people, and then you end up seeing a lot of these guys who are just assholes. And it makes everyone look bad, basically. And I personally find that very unfortunate.
This is a standard play in America. And I'll tell you right now, and if you're in the England, and this is going to be hard for you guys because I know like the politeness and like the being chill and sitting away from stuff is kind of like your guys' modus. Y'all might have to get a little bit more American out there. I hate to break it to you, but I think once this infection hits, you're going to find that it turns into election success like crazy. All right, like getting people out there, chitter chatting, meeting up. Because you want to talk about political displays. I'm fucking Louisville, man. We had fucking armed fucking 3%ers dressed up like fucking Tarkov characters just out in the middle of the town square and shit. And it's just, in America, it's constant. When I lived in Virginia, one of the people that was in my like little subdivision of apartments that we lived in had a permanent fixture in the back of his pickup truck to let him fly. Not one, not two, but 3 Confederate flags of differing sizes out of the back of his truck when he was going to, I assume, work at fucking 6 or 7 in the morning. So, like, that might be the direction that you guys are going. Unless you create a national intent to sort of quell political speech, would be very difficult, you know what I mean? Or, like, repolitize it. I think you guys are about to really hit your sort of slow motion, 10 years sort of really behind the curve with America Trumpian wave. I bet you got 1 or 2 psychos right now that are getting ready to run off this. And I'll tell you, the worst thing to do is going to be to laugh at these guys and then think that laughing at them is sufficient. And I don't know if that's actually your conclusion, but I've just seen this so many times in America, and people like Jon Stewart was even kind of like guilty of it back in the day. Seeing like Tea Partiers and being like, these Tea Party people are uneducated about the issues. They can't even tell you who the name of their fucking elected politicians are. And they are not to be taken seriously, kind of thing. I'm putting words in his mouth, but that was kind of the vibe. And fuck if the Tea Party didn't eventually turn into us having people like Marjorie Taylor Greene elected and Donald Trump, because it's will. And where there's will in politics, somebody will always find a way. And it's when you have fucking retirees and pensioners or whatever you guys call it over there, they got a lot of fucking free time. A lot of white hairs in this crowd at the riot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm gonna pass it back to you.
No. So I agree. That like I think the riots especially have, I think, raised awareness that this is an issue and that this is something we need to address. Especially if we're going to prevent this from happening, we can't just let people like Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson dominate
Hmm.
the public, the airtime. I can't think of the word, but and so yeah, and that's largely the issue, is that the left wing side of the UK has largely been quiet. It's just kind of been humming in the background, while everything has been, while the conservatives have largely kind of gone on gone on unchecked, and that's where we are right now.
Hmm.
Uh,
Same thing,
um,
literally, play for play of like 2015 America, where our
Mm.
lefty voices were, on one hand, not even lefty, but the left side of politics, the Democratic Party essentially, was on one hand uninterested in people that they thought beneath them. I mean, there's a very serious issue with the Clintonite types in the Democratic Party, kind of looking down their nose at these people in two ways of both. I don't care about your problems and I think that you're racist, but also because you're poor or you're from not inside of the cities, I don't think of you as being politically efficacious, which was dead wrong. And then on the other side, maybe not necessarily taking that tack, but being too permissive of these things in a way that was just like, well, they let them have their speech and let them talk about it. I feel like we need to kind of coddle these extreme opinions and not meet them in an extraordinary way, in a sort of sense of appeasement. And like, okay, well, I understand you have a problem and we're going to let you say what you want. I wouldn't want to treat you like a fucking asshole or anything. Get out there and scrap. And it really just was a perfect seam that split and created this new variety of American internal politics. And I saw some people saying like the rhetoric has been there, and the rhetoric, yeah, but it's really the politicking, which isn't just the rhetoric. It's the being outside. It's you're going to have people showing up with gigantic like hats and stuff with your flag on it, and like making big posters that are martyring, this guy or that girl or whoever that's just recently like lost a career because they said like trans kid bad type shit. That's really what it is. And you'll think it's ridiculous, but it provides such an essentializing core to certain political movements that it gives people a lot of juice to really say crazy shit and whip motherfuckers up into a frenzy that can really turn into votes. And it also can really scare the shit out of the other side and make people on the other side less interested in getting involved in politics, because they'll see, on the left over here, another fucking boring, stuffy, gray hair speech about workers' rights is gotta get back together and stuff. And then on the other side, you'd be like, well, this is like a fucking American, like, it's like a Marvel movie in downtown fucking Sutton or whatever the hell, And I'm just telling you guys, like, if it happens the same way it happened over here, it's gonna be fucking dog shit for you for a little bit. I hope it doesn't happen. But sorry,
Yeah.
I kind of jumped on your thing. You're there, so tell me how you feel about that.
Generally, how I feel is terrible. It's awful. The what you said there about like these guys being out there, that video, the Clacton video there, on that same day, so Nigel Farage was there, and then on that same day, Farage was walking down some steps, and a girl ran up to him and threw a milkshake on him.
Again?
Yeah.
Wait, yeah, right? Again?
Yeah. But the conversation was interesting around that because Nigel Farage is the kind of person you can do that to because he's very visible. He's always out talking to people, and it's interesting that because he can then frame that, all his supporters can frame that in a way of like he's being targeted for just actually going out and talking to people. Rather than what the girl through the milkshake had and really hated him for, like, considers him a misogynist among other things. So it's debatable as to whether like doing things like that can actually really help your cause, You can do that to Sargon of Akkad because Sargon of Akkad can't affect any change at all. He fails more movements than he succeeds. But Nigel Farage isn't like that. He can do what Sargon fails at, which is he can turn a bad situation in his favor. He can take something that's supposed to humiliate him and then use that as an attack against his opponents.
He's an actual politician instead of somebody playing at politics, basically.
Yeah. So that's So I'm condensing a lot of information. In my notes I put hyperlinks and hyperlinks along with citations of like where I got a lot of my information from. It's a non-exhaustive list, and I had to very carefully choose what I picked, because if I picked too many things, then I would be dragging myself down a rabbit hole. So I tried to keep it.
You're doing journalism, man. That's it. You can never tell the whole story. That's always the issue. You get like, fuck, I've got to get this down into 5 minutes because I have a 5-minute spot. There's 15 years of information. What do I choose? What do I pick? And then no matter what, when you get down with it, people are always going to be like, well, why didn't you get to this part? Why didn't you say that part? Like, are you going to, that I did somewhere else? All the information's there. What do you think that changes about what I had to say? But I respect it. Yeah. You did good research. I learned a lot. I feel caught up. And I want to say, and I'm going to let you say some more, but I want to say to anybody else that's out there, if you want to come and tell me about where you are, and you feel like you can kind of be this efficacious with it, please feel free to reach out on the Discord and stuff. I'm just actually legitimately interested in other cultures and other political systems and stuff. I am going to make fun of people because I have to get these viewers up.
But on that point, like,
please go ahead.
I don't mind the jokes against the accents and stuff. The most I took issue with during that stream was just like when you're talking about the rights, I was just like, he's missing something. And
no, it's fine.
That's why I wanted to come on. But like the accent stuff, I love those.
Okay. Well, you're here. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I just want people to know, like, I'll tease. I think we should all try to maybe break up the harshness of what is life with a little bit of dark humor in here. And I know really the places that I make fun of the most are usually the ones I can take it. You know, I'm dogging on I'll never make fun of Britain as good as well or as viciously or effectively as a British person will. I always thought I go too far, and then you just ask, like, you see man on the street interviews and some dude will just like, I didn't even know you could hate Britain that much. He's like, yeah, I'm from here. Like, all right, cool. And the French, no one hates France like the French except for the French. But please, was there anything else? And if you guys ever also take a note issue with anything, as long as you provide like hey Tyler, you said this is why this is wrong, I'll be receptive. If it's just a general, I don't like the way that you are, and like, well, I'm not going to be responsive to that. But this was very good and very informative.
Yeah. I was going to switch gears again because the other half of this was the final thing to add on, like, Nigel Farage is that, and Tommy Robinson, is that they're not the only ones. So Nigel Farage is only recently in Parliament. Tommy Robinson was never in Parliament. He's just a guy on the street. But there are people in Parliament who do basically say the same things that Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson do. If I list off a few names, is Priti Patel and Suella Braverman.
Oh, I know Priti
Suella
Patel.
Braverman in particular.
I know that name.
Yeah. Suella Braverman was one who they released the video, and she was the Home Secretary, so she was part of the Home Office, and they released the video talking about the small boats crisis. And do you know who Gary Lineker is?
Yeah, Glinner, isn't that? Oh, that's Lineman, right? Okay, no, I don't.
Yeah, it's Graham Linehan. Gary Lineker is he's a football commentator. But he quoted that tweet and said it was horrific, and that a lot of his view on it was that it was parroting a lot of basically Nazi shit. And the BBC then took action against him. He was forced to resign as a result, and then there was a bit of a media frenzy as people like Gary Lineker and were wondering why the BBC decided to take action against him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess this kind of goes with my kind of indictment of the British press earlier. And it's not to say that every British journalist is bad at journalism. You guys probably have some pretty great independent journalists too. But from what I understand, the news culture on the ground in Britain is very similar to Australia in that you could easily have someone like Friendly Jordies, you know, some internet fucking clown shoe, providing better naturalistic day-to-day coverage of what really is actually happening than anybody that's a professional there.
Yeah. What was it? I was going to say something. The newspapers infuriate me quite a bit. The Metro, especially. The Metro is a newspaper that you pick up like at train stations. You can basically swipe it as you're walking to your train. And that one especially annoys me because they I don't know what sort of rubbish they print in it at times. There was another one. I think it's the Economic Times, where like cost of living crisis is happening, and they're like, here's this energy company that's reporting record profits, and it incenses me to nothing else. It's one example of the media being terrible. I was a big fan of Jeremy Corbyn, and there was a news story, and the entire news story was he was reading a newspaper on the floor. That was it. He was humiliated in the press for sitting on the floor reading a newspaper at a tube station.
I would just love it. It's so impossible for me to take British press seriously. I would let. It's like, you know, we're going to have something in the Sun Times about you tomorrow. And I'm like, all right, you're a British. Unfortunately, the name on the byline's British, so I just can't give a shit. I would find it fucking hilarious. I'd love it. I would do goofy things like, you've been humiliated before the people of Britain. And it's like, well, I'm an American, so why would I care? You know what I mean? You guys got to publish. You got to publish that in a real newspaper to catch it up. I just think that dogging on British publications needs to happen way more. I want to see some wrath against them, because it's kind of like our old school shit was like that too, and I'm glad we've moved away from it from the 90s, where people would do the same thing, like, he's eating a hot dog wrong. Yeah, this guy could never possibly be a politician. We saw him eat a hot dog from the side. It's like, that's obviously weird, but can we talk about the fucking conflict in the Sudan or some shit? Like, what the fuck? What is this information?
I guess my final thing, I'll just do kind of a very small bit on just like economic issues that kind of also contributed to this. So these are economic issues that have been reframed in the context of immigration as being like causes of this. I think the Politics Joe had a podcast today where it was just where they were talking about how it's very easy to just say, here's a problem, here's a thing that you're dealing with. The problem is immigration. It's very easy to just one word, immigration, that's your problem. So I'll just rattle off some. So actually, I'll focus on this one in particular, but there's a couple I've listed here which aren't unique to the UK.
Yeah, I do have to move to the next section pretty soon. So
yeah, Liz Truss, the Queen that never was, or rather, who was Prime Minister for 44 days. They had this thing called the mini budget. In the mini budget, they introduced significant tax cuts that would have reduced the Treasury revenues by around £45 billion.
Out of what? What is your guys' budget looking like? What is £45 billion to y'all? Like, is that a lot or a little or?
It's a significant amount. That's, I think, something like $60 billion.
Okay. But like percentage wise, what is your budget? I'm sorry, is what I meant to say. So like, it's 45 of what? So like, if it's $50 billion, the American budget is something in the ballpark about 1.6 trillion per year. So like, what is your guys?
Oh, actually, I did have. So the Office of National Statistics values the. Sorry, it was 1.7 trillion.
Okay.
That's what it's marketed at, valued at.
Okay, cool. So actually, weirdly similar to the American budget. I might have the American budget numbers off. Why the fuck are you guys spending so much money?
We don't make anything. Well, we make machine parts, but that's
Yeah, you guys don't have a lot of agriculture, which I was saying before. I was hoping I guess that's one of the things you didn't call me out. But you guys don't have a lot of grow space. You do a lot of importing, like a shitload of importing, right? Because minimal amounts of grain. I think all the water you guys have is kind of ass too. You don't have a lot of natural water aquifers anymore, or do you? Am I crazy? Because you're out in the ocean, and so your byways and stuff. Every time a city basically pollutes a river, that's like a serious issue for you guys.
Oh yeah. We.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I have a link in here. It's the May 2024 report from the Office of National Statistics. So if you want to look at import export, that report has it. I'll just move on from. So this mini budget sent the economy into tailspin, and the mini budget headed by Liz Truss. Liz Truss, I want to say, is a fan of Margaret Thatcher, and she's what I want to say is leaning towards a Reaganite.
Yeah.
Strongly believes in trickle-down economics, and I know this because since she got ousted as prime minister, she's been spending time in the US. She was platformed by the Heritage Foundation, which I think we're very well aware of nowadays. Where she assailed. So this is just me reading off a report on it. Assailed wokeism, praised Donald Reagan, took swipes at France's Emmanuel Macron, and even borrowed from Donald Trump's playbook by portraying herself as the victim of a vast political conspiracy. And we're still trying to recover from that. The UK is currently in the cost of living crisis, as you've been talking about in your the working class video. Things are rough. An example I would give is a report I read. Is that people have been refusing potatoes from food banks because they can't afford the gas to boil them.
God damn. That's a fucking harsh reality. Rough. And you guys, that's another thing. You guys are pretty tapped out on energy extraction in Britain, right? I know that you had a pretty substantial coal industry in the northeast of England, and I think you can get some level of fuel from Scotland, but you guys were also fairly reliant on Russian energy exports and the IMF, so you guys do have to use International Monetary Fund for getting your energy exports or imports.
Yeah, there's been a big thing that the Conservatives never did, which I hope the Labour Party do, which is that they never capped how much the energy company, or I say they never capped, the energy companies were able to raise the cap at which they were able to raise their prices. So household energy prices have been going up. The supermarkets as well have been raising their prices. BP as well was raising their prices as well. Alongside they blamed it on Russia, Ukraine, but at the same time, it was going up quite significantly even before Russia and Ukraine kicked off.
That's rough.
So that's where we are at the moment, and that's all being blamed on immigration, and which is why we have riots right now.
God damn.
Well, it's not why we have riots right now, but it's one of the
many. I mean, that's pretty much going to be only getting worse. One thing you guys really can't do solar. You're all fucking too rainy for that solar power, aren't you? You could maybe do wind. I don't know why. I guess if it's raining
There's a
that
lot of
much,
wind
you guys got to
turbines.
figure out how to hook up like a Wallace and Gromit bucket system to every house. I feel like there's some claymation cartoon in y'all's past that has answered this problem. You need to look to your heritage as British people and figure out some sort of claptrap. I'm sorry. I'm fucking with you. This is very serious stuff. Thank you for coming in and talking. I do have to push on to the next segments now. But if you ever want to continue any of this stuff, I feel like the British economy in general is something I wouldn't mind having an expert come in and talk about. Because that's something I would like to like get down into as far as exports and like possible futures and shit.
Mm.
Are you safe, by the way, relative to the right? You said you're nowhere near Southport, so you're.
Oh no, I'm fine. I just felt really bad for the people of Southport. They basically had to suffer 2 tragedies within like a day. They frankly didn't deserve what happened to them, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I dig it. Thanks
I'll
for
put my notes in stream chat.
Yeah, the notes are going to be in the stream chat, like he said. That'll be all on Discord. Join the Westside. The link is, as always, in the episode description down below if you're watching through after the fact. And if anyone wants to put exclamation point Discord, you can get that pop up at any time in the chat as well. Thanks a bunch for calling in, Phanatik. I'm going to move on, and hope you have a good day, bud.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
You too. Bye bye.
Hope you enjoyed your time